Today on the Matt Walsh Show, a community in Louisiana is accused of racism after seceding from a crumbling, crime-infested city and forming their own. Is this a solution that could be adopted nationwide? Also, the frat boy uprising continues in response to the leftist protests on college campuses across the country. The Biden administration seems intent on promoting marijuana usage as much as possible. Why is that? There's been yet another rash of pit bull attacks around the nation. You may think that you know my opinion about it, but I might surprise you. All of that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Sports betting with BetOnline could be intriguing even if you're not a diehard sports fan. Beyond traditional sports, BetOnline gives the option to bet on political events, whether it's predicting the outcome of the presidential election, if Hunter Biden will serve jail time before 2025, or who will be the next Republican speaker. Political betting allows you to wager on real-world events outside of the realm of sports. If you're a diehard sports fan, BetOnline makes sports betting more accessible and convenient than ever before. With just a few clicks, you can place bets on your favorite teams or events from the comfort of your own home. BetOnline prides themselves on their higher-than-average betting limits of up to $25,000, and you can increase your wagering amounts by contacting their player services desk by phone or email. So while you're watching your favorite team or the news on upcoming elections, why not spice things up with a friendly wager with BetOnline? Go to betonline.ag to place your bets today. Use promo code Walsh for a 50% instant deposit bonus of up to $1,000. That's betonline.ag and use promo code Walsh. BetOnline. The options are endless. In the late 90s, a veteran and father of three named Norman Browning took a job as a volunteer coach at Woodlawn High School in East Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, Browning had been educated by Baton Rouge's public schools, and he wanted to give back to the community. But very quickly, he realized that Woodlawn was very different from the school that it used to be. For one thing, there wasn't very much discipline. Teachers didn't have close relationships with parents. They didn't seem particularly interested in doing their jobs. Test scores were abysmal. And additionally, demographics had shifted dramatically. Students were poorer than they used to be, and there wasn't much of the fabled diversity that we're told is so important. More than half of the student body was black. Meanwhile, Baton Rouge and its schools were becoming increasingly violent. Currently, it's one of the 10 most dangerous cities in the entire country. Here's just one recent example of a common sight in Baton Rouge schools. Watch.
This was the scene before class began on Wednesday morning at an EBR Readiness High School. Fists flew and students fought with law enforcement.
If you can be en route to a fight, it's going to be 4735 East Brookstown, 4735 East Brookstown. Any additional units?
BRPD officers and EBR sheriff deputies rushed to the school where things quickly spiraled out of control, leaving some students scared and confused.
I'm just waiting on my mama to come. They pepper sprayed me. Everybody just trying to get out. Everybody just trying to go home at that point.
At least 10 teenagers were arrested. There were also moments where students and law enforcement got into it with each other.
I seen the police. He slammed some dude head to the wall, and he had slammed him on the floor and put him in handcuffs. It was just buku. The police was just hitting on the kids up in there.
Outside, a gun was found in the grass.
We had to use other people's phones to call our people. They had people, mamas pulling up. They fighting.
Parents quickly showed up to pick up their children, and some even got involved in the fight.
So, just a normal day at school, learning the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. So there's a big fight in the school, and then the parents show up, and they get involved in the brawl too. And then a gun turns up, and the cops are not remotely surprised by any of this. This kind of thing has been happening consistently in Baton Rouge for the past decade or more. As the Daily Mail reports, on a single day in 2013, Browning observed as many as 6 separate fights between unruly students in one day. Now, instead of shaking his head and moving on, which he very easily could have done, Browning decided on a different course of action. As the Daily Mail reports, Browning decided to help lead a breakaway movement to effectively secede from East Baton Rouge Parish and incorporate a new city called St. George. And this new city would have schools that admit students who actually want to learn and teachers who want to teach, and hopefully the students will have parents who want to parent. That's the idea. And the idea was a bit of a long shot. Other movements to incorporate new cities and secede, most notably the effort by Buckhead to secede in Georgia, have fallen short. And that's mainly because local politicians, including conservatives, have stood in the way, have prevented these people from, protecting their families and making their lives better. But after a campaign that took the better part of a decade, in 2019, voters finally approved the ballot initiative to create St. George. What followed were years of legal battles that ended finally last week when the Louisiana Supreme Court ruled in a 4-3 decision that St. George can indeed incorporate. St. George will be a 60 square mile area with a population of more than 85,000 residents. For comparison, Baton Rouge is 76 square miles with a population of more than 200,000. And so that will make St. George one of the largest cities in the state. They'll have their own mayor, their own public services, their own city council. Watch.
Louisiana's highest court has sent its ruling down, paving the way for St. George to officially become its own city. Fox 44's Deshaun Johnson has more on this decision.
It's been an ongoing debate for years in the capital area, whether or not St. George should be incorporated into its own city. And today, that final decision was given the green light.
They had hoped that we would get this process done. They voted in this election.
I will proceed to have conversations to determine the best course of action.
The Louisiana Supreme Court ruled in favor for the new city with a 4-3 vote. Andrew Murrell, who was a lawyer for the St. George Incorporators, says that this ruling made today was something efficient for the area.
We are open for everyone. If you want more opportunity, you want a better life, you want a chance for lower crime, St. George.
Now, a key part of the Louisiana Supreme Court's ruling is that contrary to what Baton Rouge claims, St. George has the financial means to be self-sustaining, and that's not surprising. Taxpayers in that area that's now known as St. George pay roughly 2/3 of the total tax revenue of the government of East Baton Rouge. But they receive only about 1/3 of the government's expenses in return. And despite paying all those taxes, St. George residents haven't been represented in the mayor's office in Baton Rouge in modern history. So in other words, St. George is vital for East Baton Rouge's economy. And in return for all the tax revenue St. George has generated, Baton Rouge has done basically nothing for St. George. They made their neighborhood more dangerous and their schools even worse. And on top of that, the people of St. George have no real representation in local government. So now East Baton Rouge isn't going to get that tax revenue anymore, at least not anywhere near the same amount. In fact, St. George residents are currently seeking tens of millions of dollars in back taxes that they've paid to the East Baton Rouge Parish government since 2019. So you have to wonder why this isn't happening more often. Governments that don't provide basic services or representation for their citizens don't deserve tax money from their citizens. That's a pretty intuitive principle. And there's no rule that says you can't make your own city if you want to. Quite the opposite. The right of free association is a fundamental part of the Constitution. So why isn't this more commonplace? Well, one reason might be that anyone who attempts to incorporate a sane, high-functioning city will, of course, be immediately defamed as racist. And predictably, that's been the main reaction from the left to the incorporation of St. George. There has been no reckoning about the failures of Baton Rouge's leadership whatsoever. There's been no discussion about, why would all these people want to leave in the first place? Instead, no, they're just racist. So here, for example, is a former president of the NAACP in Baton Rouge reacting to the ruling of the Louisiana Supreme Court. Watch.
Well, when you look at the basis of what they have publicly said about their argument to separate from the city of Baton Rouge, it's been based around better schools, right? Which in itself on its face doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Because you have some people that have supported this movement that have held seats on our school board, right? And it's supposed to be their job to improve schools. So that notion in itself is kind of contradictory to what we see on its face. Not to mention, when you look at the makeup of the organizers and you don't have any people of color amongst them, it's hard not to make the assumption that this is something that might be racially driven. But at the same time, I have to be honest and say that the rhetoric, the narrative that they have pushed has been about better schools. But I don't see how separating our district or separating the school district can create better schools.
The other question that somebody like this will never ask is, when the residents of St. George say, hey, we don't want to be around all the crime and all the violence. We don't want that for our families. We don't want that for our children. That's what they're saying. And then his response is, oh, so you don't want to be around black people? What is So what are you saying exactly is the question. The NAACP guy starts off by saying that some of the people leading the secession movement are on the school board, so they're responsible for the failing schools. Apparently, the school board members should have used their vast influence in order to prevent brawls from constantly breaking out. They also should have forced the students to be smarter and work harder, and the teachers to care more about their jobs, and also forced the parents to actually parent their children. Then his argument devolves into accusing everybody in St. George of racism, of course. They didn't stay and try to fix East Baton Rouge's broken school system, so they must be bigots who just want to get away from black people. And the right thing for them to do is just keep sending their kids into these schools to try to fix it. Because that's what your kids are supposed to be doing, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing with your kids, is sending them into broken school systems in order to fix the school. You know, call me crazy, but I think the job of the school is to educate your kid, not the other way around. So if the school's not doing its job, then you take your kid out. This is one of the stock responses you'll hear on the left in response to the secession of St. George. For example, on Twitter, a black activist, quote unquote, named Samuel Sinyangwe wrote, "They're seceding from a majority black city to create a whites-only enclave in Louisiana." Now, of course, just as a factual matter, not that facts matter to these people, but what this activist is saying about the new city isn't true. It's not a whites-only enclave, because there are black people living in it. Specifically, 12% of the population is black, which is roughly the same percentage of black people you'll find in Barack Obama's preferred island of Martha's Vineyard, by the way. It also mirrors the overall percentage of black people in the U.S. at large, which stands at around 14%. So in other words, these activists are calling St. George a whites-only enclave, which means they're also, in effect, calling the entire country a whites-only enclave. Additionally, Woodlawn High School, which I mentioned earlier, is within the limits of the new city of St. George. This school with a lot of black students attending is not being abandoned by this new city. The point is to improve its leadership so that there's more learning going on and maybe a little bit less fighting. As crazy of an idea as that is. Of course, if you let these activists talk a little more, it becomes very clear what they're really upset about. They're not upset about racism or whatever. They know that East Baton Rouge, like so many other cities in this country, is dysfunctional. And no sane person will want to continue funding it with their tax dollars. What bothers these activists is that their source of funding is about to go to zero. Their cash cow is abandoning them. They'll have to be productive for once and solve their own problems without taking other people's money and wasting it. That NAACP president in Baton Rouge eventually gets around to kind of admitting that. Listen.
Not to mention, when you look at how they're planning on supporting themselves, it's pulling a lot of the resources and the tax bases from Baton Rouge, stuff that has been used to keep our city stable, right? So
I think Sharon Weston Broom, the mayor there, said the city of Baton Rouge could lose at least $46 million annually as a result of this.
At least, and probably more, right? So when you take all that into account, this is going to hurt the underserved. This is going to be paid for on the backs of poor black folks, right? Because
so it's pulling a lot of the resources and the tax bases from Baton Rouge, stuff that is used to keep our city stable. This is going to be paid for on the backs of poor black folks, he says. There's finally some honesty there. It's true that without St. George, Baton Rouge will probably have a lot of financial problems to deal with, but the people responsible for those problems are not living in St. George. They're running Baton Rouge, which is losing population by the day. As the Louisiana Supreme Court said in its decision, quote, Baton Rouge has arguably experienced a windfall by collecting taxes in St. George without returning proportionate money and services. Incorporation will allow the money paid by St. George citizens to stay in St. George. The record establishes the population of St. George is increasing. Conversely, the population of Baton Rouge is declining. So as St. George creates its new school system and builds out its infrastructure, it's very likely that Baton Rouge's population will continue to decline. And that's why already there's an effort by Baton Rouge activists to get the Louisiana Supreme Court to reconsider its decision. But that will probably fail, as it should. For one thing, some of the economic success of St. George will almost certainly benefit Baton Rouge in a variety of ways. St. George will keep many more people in the area, and the residents there will still pay for some services provided by the government of East Baton Rouge. But more importantly, if St. George continues to thrive, it will send a very clear signal to dysfunctional governments all over the country. And that signal is, stop wasting our tax dollars or we will leave. And we will take our tax dollars with us. That's how our system was always supposed to work. Our country was founded on the principle that governments cannot lawfully tax people without representing them or working for their benefit. And with the secession of St. George from the capital city of Louisiana, for the first time in recent memory, that principal is back. Hopefully there's much more to come. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Time is one of our most precious commodities. If you're tired of scrolling through shows on TV and find nothing but the same mind-numbing content, don't waste the precious little time you have with that nonsense. Instead, use that time to learn something new and inspiring with Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses. Learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, or the history of the ancient Christian church with Hillsdale College's online courses. If you're not sure where to start, check out The Great American Story, A Land of Hope. In this course, you'll learn from Hillsdale College professors as they explore the history of America as a land of hope founded on high principles. In presenting the great triumphs and achievements of our nation's past, as well as the shortcomings and failures, it offers a broad and unbiased study of the kind essential to the cultivation of intelligent patriotism. The course is self-paced so that you can start whenever and wherever. Start your free course, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, today. Go to hillsdale.edu/Walsh to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/Walsh to enroll. Hillsdale.edu/Walsh. Okay, I want to start by showing you this footage. This is what the UCLA protester encampment looks like now that it's been cleared out and the protesters are gone. Let's take a look at this. This is the aftermath of it.
Taking a look around the encampment after police have gone through here and forced the pro-Palestinian demonstrators out. CHP tells me 100 people were taken into custody during this operation. It took about 3 hours. What a mess.
Okay, so there's garbage everywhere. There's tents left behind, trash strewn all over the place. So UCLA's campus now looks like the rest of California. Totally disgusting and unlivable, again, like so much of the rest of the state. And this kind of thing really pisses me off. And I'll tell you why. It's because it goes to show, of course, that these frauds are obviously not really environmentalists. They're not really environmentalists in the one single way that matters. The one single way. Because the one single form of environmentalism that really matters is the simplest form. Clean up after yourself. That's the only kind of environmentalism that anyone should give a damn about. Don't litter. Don't leave garbage all over the place. That's all the environmentalism we need. If everybody did that in the world, we'd be okay. We'd live in a not a utopia, but at least a much cleaner place. So clean up after yourself. That's it. But they don't do that. And that's why liberal hotbeds like cities and college campuses are often so gross and grimy and cluttered and littered. And if you get a bunch of these liberals together in one space for a protest or anything really, you can be guaranteed that the place is going to look like a garbage dump when they leave. So they want carbon taxes and they want plastic straw bans and they want a carbon cap. All these complicated measures and policies that they want passed down from the federal government. And they do that, and while they wait for that to happen and for those things to be done from on high, they continue to just throw their garbage anywhere they want. Instead of doing the thing that they can do right now. This is a bit of an odd analogy, but it's like someone who says that who's overweight and says they want to get in shape. And so they start talking about, well, I gotta get here's all the fancy gym equipment I need to buy. Here's this. I need to talk to a dietitian. I need to get the diet plan. I need to do this. Like setting up all of these things that need to be done first, rather than doing the simple thing, which is just like right now, like don't. So they're coming up with all these plans while in the process of eating French fries. Like just don't eat the French fries right now. You start right now with the simplest thing. And if you do that, you might even find out that you don't need all that other stuff. And the environmentalists kind of take the same approach. It's like rather than doing the one thing that you can do, that we all learned, if we grew up in the 90s, we all learned this from Captain Planet. This is the one thing we all learned. Don't litter. Don't throw your stuff on the ground. And that's why I'm actually, by the way, a big proponent of anti-littering laws. This is the one kind of environmentalist law that I wholeheartedly support. I would give jail time to people who litter if I could. And that's not even a joke. I would give 6 months in jail for a first-time offense of littering, for sure. because it just shows what a total disregard for everyone else that you have. Like cleaning up after yourself is simple, basic thing. It requires almost no effort. And if you can't do that, then you deserve to be punished. It's like we went to the movies last week, and we finally saw Dune 2, by the way, which I enjoyed. But anyway, there was and, of course, you see this kind of stuff all the time. But walking through the parking lot, there was a bucket of popcorn that someone just thrown in the parking lot, and it still had most of the popcorn in it. So someone walked out and just threw their bucket of popcorn on the ground in the parking lot and walked. There's a trash can 20 feet away. And so the mentality, like think about the mentality of doing that. I'll just leave it here. I don't care. You don't care about anybody. You have no concern for anybody. You're a total sociopath. And I would be totally in favor of cops see that happen, you get arrested on the spot, you're going to jail. Although I will say in this case, one of the problems for these people, not to make excuses for them, is that they didn't have trash cans to throw their garbage in because they had cut up their trash cans to use as shields against the cops. Use them as shields to, I should say, very unintentionally humorous effect. Take a look at this footage.
Yeah. Hey, stop. I got it right now. Hey, stop doing your job. Stop doing your job.
I have so many questions. Like, first of all, what did you mean to run into him? It's like the other guy, the other dorks with the garbage can shields, they just kept running. They ran away. Like, they weren't even being chased. The cops were just standing there. This is the most obvious trap in the world. They're just standing there, and this guy runs right into him to be arrested. A few days ago, my 7-year-old was running around the house with a wooden spoon that he was using or some sort of utensil that he was using as a sword, and he had a bed sheet, tied around him as a cape. So the classic move, and that's basically what these people are doing. Like they might as well make a fort out of couch cushions at this point and put like a sign that says no parents allowed in front of it, because it's total make-believe, playing pretend. It's like a Renaissance fair. These are dorks at a Renaissance fair. I went to a Renaissance fair once. For some reason, I don't know why I went, but I was there. Actually, just last year, I was at a Renaissance fair. I was talked into it. And I was there, and there was a jousting match. And it wasn't nearly as cool as you want it to be. It was so pathetic. But it was kind of like this. Even that was more exciting than what you see from these people. Except that even though it's pathetic and nerdy, and these are a bunch of weak, ridiculous losers, they are actually, in real life, committing crimes. And then they're fighting the cops when the cops show up. Now, they're fighting the cops badly, and in a very funny way that makes us laugh at them, because they're scrawny and weak, but they're still committing serious crimes. And yet, as local news reports, the court system is not exactly treating it seriously. Watch this.
She says she's a student, and she's just being released. As I said, you'll see she has a citation. She also has her breakfast here, and she certainly will be supported by other protesters who have also been released in front of the Twin Towers Correctional Facility, as well as fellow protesters who are here just to welcome them as they leave the facility here. By the way, they're not being brought inside the facility itself. From what I understand, they're being processed at a parking lot outside as they are bussed in here from the UCLA campus. We'll send it back to you.
Okay, so they're not even being brought into the jail. They're being given citations and then breakfast. They're getting a catered breakfast. And these are people who are guilty of many crimes, not just one crime, many crimes. And this is how it's being treated. And yet these people will still pretend to be persecuted by the system. They'll still pretend that they're fighting the system and that they're persecuted by the system and that this is something they're being treated unfairly in some way. I've heard this even from people on the right, that people on the right have, the BLM protests, the cops didn't respond at all, and now they're really now they're putting the hammer down. Why is that? What are you talking? No, they're not. What are you talking about? Are we watching the same thing? First of all, none of these protesters are getting any real jail time. So just like BLM. And the cops show up like a week later after letting the protesters do whatever they want for the week. That's exactly what they did with BLM. It's the same thing. They let them do whatever they want for several days, and then finally they show up. Same exact. So it's actually no different. It's the same thing because the privilege they enjoy as leftist protesters is absolute. Now, I want to stay on these protests for the next story, which is very much related, because one trend we've noticed, one very positive and a joyous trend, is that the frat boys have risen up on campuses across the country and come out to oppose the pro-Palestine protesters. And we've seen this on many campuses. Most famously, we saw the frat boys holding up the American flag and shielding it from the protesters that were trying to defile it, with truly inspiring image. And I say that without a hint of sarcasm or irony. It's like it's a great image. Here's a clip of that was just circulating yesterday, even though this happened several days ago. But here's a clip of those guys as they're holding up the flag, interacting, shall we say, with one of the protesters. Listen.
Yeah, it is. It's you. You. More. Bro, lose some weight. Lose some weight. Hey, don't even talk to that. Hey.
Lose some weight, he says, and then he had some other choice words, which we had to bleep out. But that was there. You notice they weren't really debating the issue. They weren't getting into a political debate. Their answer was just like back off and lose some weight. And then yesterday, the frat boys again showed up. This time at the University of Mississippi, and here's what that scene looked like. So, yeah, they're just kind of there mocking and jeering at them. And, you know, on the one hand, this seems to present a pretty clear binary choice for all of us. And it does present a clear choice. Would you rather be on the side of the dorks with the trash can shields or the frat boy in the star-spangled overalls? Like, on one hand, you have a scrawny nerd with a trash can shield wearing a COVID mask. And on the other hand, you have the guy with the star-spangled overalls. Who would you rather align yourself with? And who do you want as allies? I think that's a pretty easy choice. Certainly easy for me. And I can tell you, no matter who's on the other side, I could never, ever, ever lock arms with anti-American, green-haired communists. I could just never do it. I could never do it under any circumstance. But we should also acknowledge that most likely, most of these frat boy types are not getting involved because they care deeply about the war in Gaza. Most of them probably have no opinion. Now, I don't want to speak for them. Maybe some of them do feel strongly about it. I'm sure some of them do. But I think it stands to reason. I think we could probably assume that most of them have no opinion or have only vague opinions about what's happening overseas. Because that's not the point for them. The point is that they see a bunch of anti-American, anti-white, leftist weirdos freaking out, and they instinctively want to antagonize them and take the opposite position from them. And that's a very good instinct. You can see some of these frat boys in some cases, at least one that I saw, waving Israeli flags also. And maybe it's because the guy waving the flag really cares about Israel. Maybe. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was doing that just to upset the other side, just because he knew that would send them over the edge, just because he thought the funniest thing I could do right now to these people is start waving an Israeli flag in their face. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the motivation. And that would be hilarious if that was the motivation. In other words, these kids, and we're calling them all frat boys, but they're not necessarily. Maybe some of them are, but They're actually just normal white kids. They are, what we're really saying when we say frat boys on these, like what we're really talking about are white male college students. And so these kids, frat boys or not, they're just that. They're normal. They are advocates for normalcy. They have the most normal view of this whole thing. And their view is basically, well, I don't know what's going on overseas that much, and I don't care that much, but these jackasses over here are acting ridiculous, and I'm going to make fun of them. Like, their view is, this is hilarious. Like, this is objectively funny. And so let's go make fun of them for a bit. And that's what they're doing. And that is the right approach. It's the right approach because it's the normal approach. And I prefer that, by the way. When I say that these kids are not politically involved and don't care that much about the issue, I don't say that as a lament. Like, I'm not saying, oh, they need to get better informed. And no, I'm not saying that. I'm not even saying, well, they should be engaging they should be going there and engaging in a civil dialogue, a debate. You know, they should be making points. No, not really. Because the other side doesn't care what your points are. They're not there to debate. Like, no one shows up to something like this to debate you. They don't care. They're not listening. The best thing you could do is treat it just like this. Treat it as a joke. Don't take it seriously. Treat it as a joke. You know, by the way, the left used to be very good at doing that to the right. Very good at treating everything the right did as a joke, just like as something that we shouldn't even take seriously. It's just ridiculous. And they don't do that as much anymore, or at least they don't do it effectively, because they've gone the other way. Now everything the right does, they take very seriously, because everything the right does is like the end of the world. And it's a fascist conspiracy, and it's a plot to take over the world, and it's oppression, and it's genocide. Like, everything the right does, everything we say is genocide now. So they're not really laughing at us anymore. They can't laugh at us because we are supervillains to them. And we are, just by having our opinions, we're killing people. So it's not funny. So rather than pointing and laughing at us, everything that we do, they say, well, that's not funny. This is serious. And the left was a lot more effective with the other approach. I'm glad they've stopped using that approach because, again, it was effective. But it was much more effective when they just made a mockery of everything that we did. That was, you look back at like the Tea Party movement, for example, and that was right on the edge of when the left was making this transition to no more laughing is allowed and everything is very serious. But there was still, I think, the predominant reaction to the Tea Party from a lot of leftists was just to make a mockery of it. Just treat it like a bunch of these dorks here. Now, in that case, I don't think that it was true, but that's how they responded. I think it was a more effective response than what they do now, which is to blow everything out of proportion and take it far too seriously. And so this is what's happening back in their direction. I think it's the right way. And these guys, they're exhibiting sort of the basic male instinct to ruthlessly mock something that is bizarre and strange and dishonorable and embarrassing and unpatriotic. And I think that bodes even better for the future of the country. Now, the problem, of course, is that there's hardly anyone in politics or media or in the public eye at all who's very interested in representing and defending and sticking up for normal people who want to live normal lives. There's just not a lot of that. Instead, there's a real hatred of normalcy on both sides. Now, it's mostly on the left, but there is some of that on the right. We talked a couple weeks ago about the right-wingers who were mocking a guy for having a 9-to-5 job, calling him a slave and an NPC and all of that. The guy has a 9-to-5 job. He has a wife. He's having a baby. He goes to work. He comes home. He runs some errands. Just living a normal life. And even people on the right that were treating that, like making fun of it. And that's a weird, strange attitude to have. That's not normal. Like, you're not being normal when you act that way. Can you imagine somebody responding that way in normal conversation? Like, if someone said to you, hey, what do you do for a living? And you said, oh, I work at the office down the street. And they said, wage slave? You're an NPC. What are you, some kind of automaton? Like, that wouldn't even offend you. You would just stare at them like, what? you dork. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's a bizarre antisocial response. And you do find that on the right and the left, though, again, mostly on the left. And with this conflict in Israel, you really see this dynamic brought to the forefront because on both sides, you have factions who are deeply, deeply concerned about some war overseas between people who've hated each other for centuries. And you have factions on both sides that just have intense feelings about it and demand that you share those feelings. They demand it. Meanwhile, normal Americans honestly don't care that much and would prefer to focus on stuff that matters in their own country. I mean, go up to any average person in real life and ask them how they feel about what's happening in the Middle East, and you will get some version of, oh, yeah, man, that sucks. Yeah, pretty crazy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow. Like, that's what you're going to get from just stop someone, average person on the street, that you'll get something like that. And again, I don't say that as a lament. That's a normal. It's like, because it's not, this is something thousands of miles away. It has no bearing on my everyday life. Why should I care? Why should I be deeply invested in that? Why should I spend every waking moment of my life thinking about this and like talking about it and on social media obsessing over it? I mean, prior to the internet, that wouldn't even be an option. Like, prior to the internet, if things are happening thousands of miles away, yeah, you might find out about them, but you would only ever, you could read a newspaper article about them once a week, or maybe not even that often. And that would be it. Like, it wouldn't even be an option to obsess over it on a daily basis every day. There's not enough content to do that with. So you'd really have no choice but there's some war thousands of miles away. You read about it in a newspaper article on a Sunday, and then and that's it. That's the only thing you read about it. And then you go about your life. And I think that's a healthy and normal way to live, and that's how a lot of people want to live, but there's just not a lot of representation of that viewpoint. All right. So I wanted to mention this. The Biden administration moved Tuesday to reclassify marijuana as a lower-risk substance. A person familiar with the plans told CNN, this is a historic move that acknowledges the medical benefits of the long criminalized drug and carries broad implications for cannabis-related research and the industry at large. The U.S. Department of Justice recommended that marijuana be rescheduled as a Schedule III controlled substance, the classification shared by prescription drugs such as ketamine and Tylenol with codeine. Today, Merrick Garland circulated a proposal to reclassify marijuana from Schedule I to Schedule III, according to the DOJ's Director of Public Affairs, with a name that I won't even try to pronounce. Xochitl, first name, last name Hinojosa. Hinojosa is the last name. That's not too hard. Zacatol? How do you pronounce that? Like, you can't go around with a name like that. You just can't. Sochi is what I'm being told? That's Sochi? That's how you pronounce that? Sochi. Say it again. Sochi. Sochi Hinohisa. So the X sound is an S sound, and then there's this TL hanging out at the end of the name that just doesn't get pronounced at all. It's just sitting there for no reason. Is what you're telling me? That you can't have a name like that. You can't have that name. If I was in charge, you're not having that name, or you're spelling it differently. Anyway, what were we talking about? So marijuana. So they're rescheduling marijuana. And here's the only thing I'm going to say about this. And I know it upsets a certain portion of the audience quite a bit when we talk about marijuana. And unfortunately, I don't really care when people are upset. So I'll just say again, it's worth asking yourself, why do they want you smoking this stuff so much? Like, why are the powers that be going out of their way? I'm not asking you to get super conspiratorial about this, because it's not very conspiratorial. This is not some sort of far-flung, far-fetched conspiracy I'm talking about. But why do they want you smoking this stuff? They're going out of their way to make it as available as possible, as accessible as possible, making it legal. And then also, now they're rescheduling it, they're reclassifying it to say that it's less dangerous than it was before. Like, and does that even make any sense? Like, what changed? Why is it a lower risk substance now, right now in 2024, if it wasn't before? I mean, if anything, like, hasn't marijuana gotten more potent over the years? So it's gotten more potent, but it's lower risk than it was 20 years ago. How? That doesn't make any sense. So, but this is what they're doing. And these are the most powerful people in the country who very clearly have no problem with your marijuana habit, and they very much want you to continue it, and they want you to smoke it even more. And they're doing everything they can to remove all the hurdles that they possibly can. And anytime you say that, you see something like that, you should always ask yourself, like, what do you get out of this? Like, what do these people get out of this? What do they get out of you smoking a lot of pot? Because they clearly want you to. It's almost like these people know that marijuana makes you, sedates you, makes you, numbs you, makes you kind of lethargic, zoned out, not paying attention. Like, it's almost like they know it has that effect, and that's exactly the kind of population that they want, because that's a population that doesn't resist whatever it is that they're doing. Something to think about. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the sweet baby gang.
$20 barely gets you anything these days, but do you know what $20 will get you? From the cell phone company I use, Pure Talk, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Pure Talk gives you the same quality of service as your current cell phone provider, but for half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can switch to Pure Talk, keep the phone and phone number you currently use, or you can take advantage of their great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Making the switch is incredibly easy. Their U.S. customer service team can help you join Pure Talk in as little as 10 minutes. Choose to spend your hard-earned money with a wireless company that shares your values, supports our military and veterans, creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on fake news networks. Stop spending ridiculous amounts on your phone plan. Go to puretalk.com/Walsh. Right now, my listeners can get an additional 50% off their first month. That's puretalk.com/Walsh. Brandon says, yikes, I could be wrong, but if Matt continues talking about the anti-Semitism question, he won't be at the Daily Wire anymore. Now, it's interesting. I keep being told that I'll be fired from the Daily Wire for saying the things that I say all the time on the Daily Wire. So I say these kind of things all the time. And every time I do, the comments come pouring in. Watch out, Matt. Watch out. And the other thing that has been interesting to me is to see all the commentary responding to me speaking out against these hate speech laws, as I've been doing. And there's a lot of commentary about what I've been saying, and the commentary insists that this is some kind of change for me, that I'm going out on some sort of new limb saying these things. Oh, why is Matt speaking out about this now? What's going on? No, this is what I've always said, okay? I've always had this position. None of this is new to me. I haven't changed my views at all on this stuff. My views on hate speech laws have not changed. My views on what constitutes anti-Semitism or any other kind of bigotry has not changed. My views on Israel and wars overseas and the situation in the Middle East, that hasn't changed. I have changed my views. I have remarkably few of my views, let's say, have changed. Now, some of them have, as naturally happens to anybody as they continue living. You're not going to have the same opinion about everything. It's not like your opinions get locked in when you're 20 years old and they don't change at all. At least that it shouldn't. If it works, if that's the case for you, then that's another problem. There's the one problem of changing your views constantly because you're trying to triangulate and not offend people and all that, or because you have no grounding, no principles. And then there's the opposite problem of never changing any of your views because you're not thinking at all and you're not a critical thinker and you're not intellectually honest. For me, I think where I am, it's pretty, going back to being normal. It's a pretty normal thing. Like, I have basic principles that have stayed mostly the same, changed my views on a few things. That's where I've been. And so I don't know what to tell you. Just, you can check me on this. You can go back. I've been saying a lot of things for a long time. There's I have been speaking publicly for a long time. And you can go back and you can kind of track it, and you'll find that, like, wow, he's literally been saying the same thing. If anything, that should be your criticism of me. Your criticism should be I repeat myself way too much. That I've been saying the same thing on the same topics for like 10 years. So if anything, I would think that would be the criticism. You'd be saying, hey, Matt, change it up a bit. Like, it's a little much. We get it. Instead, what I often get from the peanut gallery is the accusation that when I say something that's the same thing I've been saying for 10 freaking years, somehow it's a shift. This is a shift in my thinking. It's not. Okay. Another comment says, awareness should never be anything more than a civil social concept, never legal or enforceable. I think that's exactly right. Anytime you hear about any law that has anything to do with awareness, especially if awareness is in the title, like it is with the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, anytime you hear that, you automatically know that something is wrong, because that is not what a law is supposed to do. Laws are not designed to raise awareness about things. Another comment says, shout out to Mark Dice for coining the term anti-whiteism years ago. Indeed, and very useful term. And I think a term that we should start using more often. And also, on the topic of anti-whiteism, there's an important distinction here that I thought about yesterday that is worth making. That because on one hand, I started the show talking about the problem of anti-white racism, anti-whiteism, saying how Donald Trump wants to address it, says he's going to address it if he gets a second term. I think that's a good thing. He should address it. And then I end the show talking about anti-Semitism, and there's a law that's supposed to address anti-Semitism, and I'm opposed to that. So how could that be the case? Well, it's the case, well, it's a few reasons, but the main thing is this, that anti-white racism, anti-whiteism is enshrined right now in politics. It is actually systemic. So when I talk about especially having a political leader fight anti-whiteism, I'm not talking about stopping people, private citizens, from saying they hate white people. You have the right to say that. You can say you hate anybody. You can say you hate me. You can hate anybody for any reason. I've been very clear about that. The problem is that anti-white racism is the one kind of bigotry that is actually systemic in that it is written into our policies. It is enforced by the government. And so when I say someone like Donald Trump or any political leader should be fighting it, that's what I'm talking about. Getting it out of our laws, getting it out of our policies, so that white people are actually treated equally by our policies. And that's the difference between anti-white racism and any other kind of bigotry you can name. But all these other kinds of bigotries, although they certainly exist, like every kind of bigotry exists. You take any type of person, there are people out there who hate that type of person. That's always the case. But anti-white bigotry is the only kind that is actually explicitly systemic and systematic in our country. And that's the big difference. The countdown's officially on Sunday, May 12th. We here at the Daily Wire are setting out on a new journey with our first ever animated series, Mr. Bertram. We're rolling out the red carpet for all of you with a free series premiere exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Mr. Bertram is the brainchild of the brilliant Adam Carolla. Bertram is a junior high woodshop teacher who's standing his ground in the wave of modern-day lunacy. He's tough as nails, and he's not about to let some overzealous social justice warrior dictate the terms of his classroom or his life. And it doesn't stop there. Our friend Adam Carolla has rallied an unparalleled lineup of talent for the series, including Megyn Kelly, Roseanne Barr, Sage Steele, Danny Trejo, Kyle Dunnigan, Patrick Warburton, Tyler Fisher, and our very own Brett Cooper, and a whole lot more. Take a look at the official Mr. Bertram trailer right now.
Just tell me what you need. Jump into the first one. Rolling, speed, action.
Sawbuck's looking a little chubby-wubby, so I bought him some new food. It's organic and vegan.
Dogs are supposed to eat meat. They're descendants of wolves. You ever see a vegan wolf on the Nature Channel?
I'm a vegan.
Coffee is for closers, ladies. Listen up!
Hey, don't make this a prison hug.
I'm a heteronormative, cisgendered white male.
For which I apologize.
I'm black, and that used to be enough, but I'm also bilingual, and I'm non-binary.
We're the Army! We drink more before 9 a.m. than you Navy pukes do all day.
He rubbed all the fur off his emotional support ferret. The damn thing looked like a four-legged penis.
Charity and work. Two words that should never go together. Like women and opinions.
I want a burly man. They're salty and make me dizzy.
Sorry, just need to find a thingy to fix my gaming chair.
When I was on the construction site, my chair was a 5-gallon bucket. It was also my toilet.
Hey, I'm done. I'm going back to bed. Thanks a lot.
Prepare for the razor-sharp comedy that only Adam Carolla and the Daily Wire can deliver. Don't miss out on the series premiere, streaming free on Sunday, May 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Daily Wire Plus. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. Well, disturbing video circulated yesterday showing a man in Philadelphia being attacked and mauled by a pack of dogs in the middle of the street. The local ABC News affiliate reports that there were 4 dogs involved in the attack. 3 of them were pit bulls. The other was a cane corso who apparently, fell in with the wrong crowd. And I think we're going to have to blur pretty much this whole video, but here is footage of the attack anyway.
Bro, this pit just somebody up, dude.
No! Shoot the shoot!
Bro!
Shoot the police! Police! Hey, police! Shoot! Shoot! That's us?
No. Bro.
Okay. So I'm glad we got the commentary from that guy, bro. This is pretty bad. Anyway, so you watch that. The first thing you think is, where's Kristi Noem when you need her? Fortunately, I will say the man did survive that attack. It was an attack that happened to occur on the same week that a 9-year-old girl in Iowa was mauled by a pit bull and sustained severe injuries. The owner of the dog in that case was arrested. And also in the same week, 2 pit bulls had to be euthanized after attacking a 58-year-old man in Baltimore. All 3 of these incidents happened only a few weeks after a 3-month-old baby was mauled and killed by the family pit bull in New Jersey. And a few weeks before that, a 35-year-old man in California was attacked by his pit bull, and he did not survive the attack either. Now, it's not especially surprising, of course, that pit bulls are responsible for all these attacks. After all, pit bulls and Rottweilers together account for nearly 80% of fatal dog attacks, even though they comprise less than 10% of the dog population. And as you can see from this chart, the vast majority of those are pit bulls, with Rottweilers coming in a very distant second place. Now, pit bulls account for 60% of all dog bite injuries, and the injuries they cause are much more likely to be severe. Overall, pit bulls are far more likely to attack and far more likely to cause serious death or injury when they do attack. They are both the most aggressive breed and the breed most capable of inflicting maximum damage. And that's the reason why I have been in the past a very vocal proponent of banning pit bulls. There's no disputing the fact that these dogs are uniquely dangerous. They are, the statistics clearly show, by far and away the most dangerous breed of dog, a breed that is genetically predisposed to aggression. There's a reason why every single one of us, if we see a stray pit bull running down the street, we will be extremely worried if the dog approaches us. But if we see a stray golden retriever or lab or beagle or any of dozens of other breeds, we will not be nearly so concerned. Now, I made this argument again on Twitter yesterday in response to that video we just played. And I got 6,000 responses, and many of them quite angry. Angry at me, I mean. Not angry about the pack of dogs mauling that guy. Instead, they were angry at me. So a rabid pack of pit bull owners descended on my comment section, accusing me of anti-pit bull bigotry. And they made all the familiar arguments. They said that it's not about the breed, it's about the owner. They said that their own pit bulls are the sweetest little darlings in the world. They would never hit a fly. They said that banning pit bulls would be somehow just like banning guns. They said that there's no such thing as a bad dog, only a bad owner. They made all the arguments that I normally find so absurdly unpersuasive. But this time, I have to admit, I know I just said I don't change my mind very often, but they really got through to me. I read all these thousands of comments of pit bull owners crying hysterically because I had an opinion that they didn't like, and it really affected me. I can't really describe it. I realized the error of my ways. You know, pit bulls might be disproportionately dangerous and far more likely to kill or maim than almost any other breed, but I realized that you pit bull defenders are right. Like, why should that stop you from bringing them into the community? Yes, they might try to eat your neighbor's child, but frankly, that's none of your neighbor's business. And sure, yes, there are plenty of other breeds that are much, much less likely to attack, and even if they do attack, are much, much less likely to do any significant damage. But why shouldn't you skip over all of those significantly safer breeds and specifically choose the one that poses the greatest statistical risk to everyone around you, including your family and yourself? Sure, I mean, it's true, pit bulls are genetically predisposed to aggression and built to inflict maximum damage, but why should that have any impact on your decision to adopt one? Sure, yes, the risk you take by adopting a pit bull is also a risk that you're forcing everyone around you to take as well. But, I mean, why should that matter to you? Like, I could see it all clearly now. It makes sense. I never understood the wisdom of this perspective before, but now I really do. Like, I get it. I get it. In fact, I'm so persuaded that I've decided to take these arguments and apply them to my own life. After all, every pro-pit bull argument could be used to justify the ownership of literally any dangerous animal. And that's why I've decided to go out, and it's a little bit unique, but I've decided to go out and adopt a hippopotamus and keep it at my house with my children in my neighborhood where other people live. Now, look, I know what the anti-hippo bigots might say. They'll say that hippos are massive animals that are extremely aggressive and very dangerous and totally insane to keep at your house. They'll claim that it's far too risky to own an animal like that. They'll point out that hippos are the deadliest large land mammal on the planet, responsible for killing 500 human beings a year. But like, that's all propaganda. I mean, it's true. The statistics say what they say, but there's no need to worry about statistics. Hippos may kill 500 people a year, but there are 8 billion people on Earth. That means that, think about this. This is what I said to my neighbors. That means 7,999,999,500 humans aren't killed by hippos every year. Now, it's estimated that somewhere around 10,000 people globally are killed by lightning strikes each year. And that means you are far more likely to be killed by lightning than by a hippo. So why should my hippo worry you? You know, you see, the statistics don't matter unless they're the weird and random statistics that I decide to use, where I compare animals to inanimate objects and natural phenomena. So those statistics are extremely important. But the basic, straightforward statistics about how aggressive my animal is, those don't matter at all, you see. And when I decide to take my hippo for a walk in your neighborhood, you may feel concerned. You may feel like it's perhaps unfair that I should bring a highly aggressive and dangerous animal around you and your family, forcing you to inherit the risk that I've decided to take with my own life. But what you should understand is that, you know, there are no bad hippos, only bad owners. And you might think this is an argument for at least requiring that hippo owners obtain some sort of license and go through some sort of training, given that I'm admitting that a poorly raised hippo will indeed be a danger to the community. But no, I would never even agree to that. I am putting all of the danger of hippo ownership on the owners, but also not agreeing to any sort of regulation or requirement for the owners. I hope that makes sense. And even if it doesn't, too bad. Look, my hippo is a sweetheart. You may hear all these stories about hippos mauling and attacking people, but I could pull out my phone right now and show you so many photos of my hippo not attacking or mauling anyone. How could hippos be dangerous when I have literally dozens of photos of my hippo not being dangerous? Yesterday, I put a silly hat on my hippopotamus, and like, it was so cute. Are you seriously trying to tell me that an animal in a silly hat can be dangerous? Come on. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. Far too cute to kill anyone. This is airtight logic. And if you don't see that, it's because you're blinded by your anti-hippo prejudices. Besides, telling me that I can't own a hippo is a slippery slope. First, you stop me from owning the most dangerous land mammal in existence. Next thing I know, you're confiscating my guns, you're kicking me out of my house, forcing me to live in the sewer. You see, guns are things that I have a right to own, and a hippo is also a thing. And therefore, I have a right to own a hippo. You see, because the two things are both things. Now, you might claim that they're very different things, but I fail to see the difference. If I were to draw a Venn diagram with hippo in one bubble and a Glock 19 in the other, that middle intersecting bubble would be full of similarities. Too many to count. For example, first of all, they're both things. Second, well, anyway, like I said, there are too many to count. Now, I know what you might be saying. You might be saying, Matt, there are so many different pets that you can safely own. Why do you have to go out and adopt the one kind of pet that presents such a unique and singular risk to you, your children, and your neighbors? Why can't you just not own a hippo? Why does your desire to own a hippo outweigh everyone else's desire to not be mauled to death by a hippo? Well, the answer is shut up. I'll do what I want. Your questions are harmful and violent. Look, it may hurt you to be crushed to death in the jaws of my hippo, but it hurts me even more to hear you say mean things about my pet hippo. Yes, my hippo can crush your skull, but your anti-hippo rhetoric crushes my soul. And worst of all, it upsets my hippo. And you don't want to upset him. Trust me on that. Anyway, thank you to the pit bull owners who have shown me the wisdom in this line of thinking. I apologize, truly, for all the years I've spent criticizing you. I see now that I was wrong. I was the insane person. I thought that you were all totally and completely insane and irresponsible. I see now that it was me. All of the pit bull critics and the hippo critics are wrong. And they are all today canceled. That'll do it for the show today and this week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you on Monday. Have a great day. Godspeed. The executive producer of The Matt Walsh Show is Sean Hampton. Our associate producer is McKenna Waters. The show is directed by Mark Jones and Trey Miller. Our production manager is Austin Michaelis. The show is edited by Jeff Tomlin. Our lead audio engineer is Mike Coromina. Our audio engineer is Ryan Reese. Our hair and makeup artists are Cherokee Hart and Andrea Bauer. Our wardrobe stylists are Kristen Galarraga and Cameron Lasco. The director of production is Mathis Glover. Our director of post-production is Matthew Kemp. The director of studio operations is Pavel Vodosky. Camera studio and equipment management is Patrick Kennedy. Our chief broadcast engineer is Jeff Govin. And our assistant broadcast engineer is Allegra Rohr. Our lighting director, Keith Duggan. The show designers are Kat Darnell and Cynthia Angulo. Episode thumbnails are created by Grace Gordon and Clay Hyder. Our playback operators are Finn Pope and CJ Hickish. And our show assistant is Holly Pratt. Our production assistants are Mike Moran and Zach Lewis. Executive in charge of production is David Wormus. Executive producer is Jeremy Boring. The Matt Walsh Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2024.
Hey everybody, this is Andrew Klavan, host of The Andrew Klavan Show. You know, some people are depressed because the Republic is collapsing, the end of days is approaching, and the moon's turned to blood. But on The Andrew Klavan Show, that's where the fun just gets started. So come on over to The Andrew Klavan Show and laugh your way through the fall of the Republic with me, Andrew Klavan.